listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast, the most listened to daily Miami Dolphins podcast on the internet.
Miami's got the Dolphins, the greatest of all.
Come on, Dolphins fans. Time to fins up.
We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. And when you say Miami, you're talking Super Bowl. Cause we're the Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one. Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one.
How is it going, everyone? It is World Series night, but we're here on DolphinsTalk.com to unfortunately have an Overreaction Monday segment here on the podcast because yesterday was, quite frankly, kind of embarrassing, if I'm being honest. And JJ and I are here to kind of go through all of that. But first of all, JJ, how have you handled this loss so far? Because I know a lot of the Fins fans out there have not taken it too kindly.
Look, Andrew, last week I was mad, and I'm sure a lot of Dolphins fans were more furious and overreacted and more vexed and acted with more vehemently last week. However, this week, I'm not mad. It's just how we are. It's how we are as a team. A bunch of stars and no depth in this team, no chemistry within this team, just horrible coaching down the stretch, horrible losses, horrible blown leads last week and this week, and I think that I just don't have any words. I'm not handling it well. Andrew, how's it going today? I see the Yankees gearing up for the World Series. Explain to us how you're a Dolphins fan. New York, born from New York, Yankees fan gearing up for the World Series. Why are you a Miami Dolphins fan?
Well, as you can see, I've very quickly moved on from this loss and kind of accepted that the Miami Dolphins season might be coming to a bit of a close a little earlier than we all wanted. Of course, I'm a big Yankees fan, born and raised in the New York area. But for the Dolphins, it's just the fact that the Jets and Giants were never that great, and I wanted to be different than my friends. So that's what I get, I guess. Now the Jets and Giants are having pretty bad seasons, and apparently so are the Miami Dolphins. So I don't know if I picked much better. But let us pretty much dive into this game. It was definitely, again, quite a disappointing one on all sides of the ball, offensively and defensively. It was the return of Tua Tagovailoa that was greatly it just did not go as great as a lot of people wanted it to, and hopefully it'll go a little better next week.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, Andrew. Yesterday, it was hard to watch. Someone who was at the Dolphins game, I had to experience it firsthand in myself, and it was terrible the entire game. There are some positives we can take from it. But again, another blown lead, giving up 21 points in the second half. And you did the one thing you can't do. We focused and we emphasized this entire preview yesterday on stopping the run, and the Dolphins did just that, only letting up 3.2 yards a carry. However, the pass game hurt them, giving up 300 yards to a team that ranks 30th in passing yards in the NFL is something that you just can't do. The linebackers in the secondary are the people to blame. I thought the offense played good, however. I thought jumping out to a good start was huge, and the running game is something we also emphasized. And we were able to get the running game going and stop their run. I thought Raheem Mostert getting into the end zone twice, giving it to him on goal line stands was solid play calling. Also, we saw Jalen Wright with that huge run on 2nd and 19, giving the Dolphins great field position. And let's not forget what Devon Achane did. 10 yards a carry. He had that huge run beginning of the third quarter, which gave them the Dolphins another great field position. I thought overall, I wouldn't say that it was the worst game we've played all season. However, I thought that the defense was the worst we played, and I feel like it was the most unexpected game so far this season because we thought all we had to do was stop the run. Cardinals go into the game averaging nearly 5 yards a carry. Kyler Murray, with him being one of the best dual threats, one of the best running quarterbacks in the country. And just speaking of the Cardinals themselves, overall, their passing defense, it ranked 30th. It moved up to 26th in the NFL. Overall, and their defense as well was 27th in total defense. So this is one of the worst defenses in the NFL. And I thought that putting up points was solid, but there were definitely a bunch of missed opportunities. Just to go through a very, very quick recap from last week, some of the things that I think were terrible. Some of the key things that need to be emphasized and worked on. 4 fumbles, yes, 3 of them were recovered, but again, that's not something that we want. Again, giving it to Julian Hill instead of putting one of the 3 running backs in A-Chain, Moster, or even Jalen Wright, the rookie out of Tennessee, is something I don't understand. It happened last week with Alex Ingle. Why are you fumbling at the goal line? Um, Cardinals running double tight end multiple times and the Dolphins not being able to stop it. This is a secondary built off talent. Jalen Ramsey. I mean, you have Jalen Phillips, Jalen Ramsey. I know Cater Kohu was out. So terrible from just not stopping tight ends. I do like that there were 0 turnovers on offense for the Finns, but not forcing any turnovers against this offense, which has struggled this season, is something that's concerning. The Dolphins have lacked their defense in total throughout this season. And Michael Wilson was burnt Jalen Ramsey the entire game. Let's not exaggerate it. It's just true. Michael Wilson was able to get open on streaks. We talked about Marvin Harrison having the 3rd lowest separation in the NFL, but and I thought he did good. I thought he was able to get those big passes, that huge pass in the 3rd quarter where he ran a hitch, but then had that yards after the catch. As I mentioned, Michael Wilson burning Jalen Ramsey, being able to get open on slants and out routes as well. The 2-minute defense has been terrible, and especially the 4th quarter itself, again, giving up points, 21 points in the second half, letting the Cardinals drive down. And again, that 2 tight end formation that they were playing in Elijah Higgins being the main one in the 4th quarter. I mean, in the final drive more so. Not stopping that, and then let's go over the final couple things. I mean, I think the worst thing was the missed sacked opportunities, but we're going to get to the defense. We're going to get to everything in a bit. Andrew, what were your overall thoughts of the game?
Listen, I feel bad a bit for some of the things we said yesterday because, well, we may have jinxed ourselves a little bit. We mentioned all the talk going about Marvin Harrison Jr., how his season is going, some of the injuries that started out a couple weeks ago, and all the people calling him a fraud or a bust and things like that. Obviously, that is just not the case because yesterday, 111 receiving yards and that one amazing touchdown in the end zone, which I just did not like at all. If we want to go, I think you covered a lot of the other things I was going to mention. If we want to see what's going on in the chat, Mike says what really killed us is not our defense, but our offense with Tua out for 4 weeks. Definitely agree. Things just went off the rails, and we already saw Tyreek Hill within the first 5 minutes of this game get more targets plus more receptions than he did all last week. So it's just showing how that connection worked. Of course, Jalen Waddle got in the mix as well, making receptions. So it's not like it was bad, but I think that the coaching is the thing that particularly set us off the rails because, again, we mentioned that snap at the goal line, which was just not great, and we didn't have a good turnaround from that. I think that Asian and Mostert had absolutely amazing games, and I just think that they should have been utilized a little bit more, especially when they were hot. And then Tua, 28 for 38 is pretty good, especially coming back in his first game in 4 weeks. But the one touchdown, just not being able to utilize his receivers well. And, of course, we saw them settling for that field goal towards the end of the second half. So hopefully we can learn from these things in the future. But, JJ, my question is, the whole point of this segment here is Overreaction Monday. What are you overreacting about the most after this game?
There's a couple of things. I think the main thing that the Finns nation and Finn fans have been saying is Anthony Weaver to be fired. And I'll get to Grier in a second. I have a bit of a different opinion, an optimistic opinion on Grier. But if you want to hear my full rant, I am overreacting. I mean, I think the biggest overreaction right now is Anthony Weaver. And I'm not overreacting on that. I'll get to my overreactions in a bit, Andrew. But I want to first start with Anthony Weaver, the defensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins. And the defense has been outstanding. Let's not forget, coming into this game, I believe the number one team against the pass going into this game. It was horrific yesterday, giving up 300 yards, but let's not forget this secondary has been elite so far this season. Yes, yesterday was not good, giving up 300 yards to Kyler Murray through the air. Jalen Ramsey getting burnt time and time again, 21 points in the second half. And yes, I thought the pass defense was terrible. However, let's not take for granted how good the passing defense has been going into this game. And the rushing defense, I think we can rely on Anthony Weaver because the rushing defense against a really good Cardinals running game in James Conner, who averages 5 yards a carry, and Kyler Murray being that dual threat type of guy, only giving up 3.2 yards a carry is something that has been I thought that was better than what expectations were. Especially when you have a bottom 10 rushing defense in the country. But we got torched through the air. I think Anthony Weaver deserves time. Do I think he's better than Vic Fangio? I mean, Vic Fangio is more of that bend but don't break defensive guy. He's very lenient and not aggressive. I think Anthony Weaver, he does have a lot of similar traits to Vic Fangio, but it's his first year. He's fixed this defense immensely. Let's give him some time. That's one of the overreactions we have. Andrew, I want to bring up real quick someone who has supported this show in Caneswear. So tell us a little bit about Caneswear.
Yeah, Caneswear, located in Davies, Florida, has all of the gear for your South Florida and Miami sports teams. But if you're not in South Florida, don't worry. And tuning into the show, you can also order online. Let's hear from our sponsor of the show real quick.
The DolphinsTalk.com podcast network is sponsored by Caneswear. Caneswear is the place to go for officially licensed apparel for the Miami Dolphins, Miami Heat, the Hurricanes, Florida Panthers, and all of the professional and college teams in South Florida. Looking for the latest jersey, a birthday gift, or the newest hat to hit the market of your favorite South Florida team? Check out Caneswear for their overwhelming selection of sports apparel. Located at 2655 South University Drive, Davie, Florida, Caneswear has it all. Not in South Florida? No worries. Visit Caneswear.com to shop their inventory from the comfort of your home, and they'll ship it to you. International fans, too. Caneswear.com is the spot that Miami fans shop. That's Caneswear.com. Caneswear.com.
Yeah, thank you, Caneswear. But let's get back into some of these overreactions. JJ, I first of all just want to respond to something you were saying a little bit earlier. You're talking about how this defense certainly did struggle throughout this game yesterday, and it's not just because there were injuries going on. The main part of this defense that needs to be perfected immediately is that we'll call it the 2-minute defense towards the end of last game, because obviously that is what led to the Cardinals being able to kick that game-winning field goal, because we certainly had the edge in that game at that point. Of course, we were up. We had just stopped that 2-point conversion to allow them to stay behind earlier in the game, and that was great. Our defense played those 2 drives great. But now we're in a point where we totally have the capability to win this game, and we just don't. It was as simple as that. We didn't win the game because of that defense at the end. Of course, the Cardinals played that drive excellent, but we could have done better. And there were changes that definitely could have been made from the defensive coaching standpoint and just in general on the defensive side of the ball that could have won us that game in the end.
Yeah, I 100% agree. There's a lot of guys I'd like to highlight on the defense who had not the greatest games. And I think something you mentioned specifically that I wanted to touch on was the pressure. The Dolphins rushed four guys consistently each game. Sometimes you'd bring in guys like Jordan Brooks or Emmanuel Ogba in the linebacker room to press up and bring blitzes. But we consistently were able to get pressure on Kyler Murray, just not come up with the sacks. He was under pressure, but with his dual threat ability and him being able to get outside the pocket with his versatility, we weren't able to get sacks. 0 sacks this game, although you brought pressure, and it was either you brought pressure and you didn't come up with sacks, or there wasn't pressure at all. I give credit to this Cardinals offensive line who ranks top 15 in time given to Kyler Murray this season, according to PFF. So I thought that the linebacker room in general is not good the entire game. And you mentioned the one guy who you thought was cooking the Miami Dolphins, which was Michael Wilson. And he was mainly getting open on slant routes. Yes, Marvin Harrison, that touchdown, that catch was spectacular. But let's go to these Cardinals receivers. And a lot of these receptions, although there were some big 10, 9-yard receptions over the middle, you had guys like Michael Wilson and Trey McBride who got these short receptions over the middle, and that fault goes on the linebackers. Chop Robinson played terrible. He wasn't able to tackle. He didn't stay on his man. He didn't travel with Wilson at all. I thought Jordan Brooks played an okay game, but again, you would bring him to pressure and he would miss a lot of tackles as well as Ogba. David Long, someone again who consistently got burnt on the defensive side of the ball. The linebackers lost you this football game, and Kyler Murray was sacked 0 times, as I mentioned. So, yes, you got some pressure, but you couldn't bring him down, and that's going to be a recipe for disaster overall. This defense struggled.
Yeah, a couple things I want to reiterate from pretty much what you just said. I, if you go look at the highlights from this game, like I did to help kind of prepare for the session, you see David Long just in the background of almost every major reception for this Arizona Cardinals team, just kind of trotting along after he just absolutely missed his man. So I think that there were definitely some issues with the linebackers. Pressure was applied, didn't come up with the sack multiple times. Guys getting burnt, slamming the turf after they lose their guy in Kyler Murray. So it definitely was not a great game overall for the defense. And then someone in the comments mentioned the new guy, Cam Smith, who also did not particularly have a great game. Of course, he is filling in for an injury there, but didn't necessarily show anything crazy. Duke from the YouTube chat says the team has the talent. It's the coaching and play calling. Not sure if Grier is the problem. And that's something that you wanted to actually mention and go into. You had said that this coaching staff might be the issue, from defensive coaching to some of the main play calling and decisions from Coach McDaniels. But why is Grier not the problem, as Duke said?
Yeah, I don't think Chris Grier is the main problem for this Miami Dolphins team. I thought the last 2 seasons, obviously, the Dolphins made the playoffs after the coaching change from Brian Flores to Coach Mike McDaniel. And overall, I thought that Grier constructed this roster in a way that that was solid. That was solid. And overall, I didn't think that Chris Grier has done a horrible job as the GM. He obviously was hired in 2016, I believe it was. Andrew, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure 2016. And there have been weird signings, which I will mention in the last calendar year, like Jordan Poyer and Odell Beckham Jr., 2 guys who haven't seen much playing time, who haven't been the greatest gets, especially with the cap room, with them being minus 5.2 million in the salary cap. And OBJ and Poyer haven't been getting playing time, and those are two moves in the last calendar year that haven't been good. Letting Deshaun Elliott and Brandon Jones walk also are things that I don't like, and I think Poyer sucks so far this season. I'll say it straight up. Rigo actually says Poyer sucks in the chat. I mean, we disagree with you. And the roster construction this last calendar year has been bad. It has been bad. Getting guys to big contracts who haven't been playing. The only good signing this last calendar year that I think was Calais Campbell this year, who has been a huge positive on the defensive line, a veteran guy who signed to a 1-year deal before practice, before training camp this season, I believe. But yeah, I mean, Grier has been with the Dolphins since 2016, and he's had one goal, and that's to win playoff games. It could be one game, just any improvement. We've got to the playoffs the year he was hired in 2016, had that abysmal game against the Steelers, a game in which I unfortunately went to in Pittsburgh in 2016. And then last two seasons, yes, making it into the playoffs, but no wins. And I think that Chris Grier is somewhat to blame. However, I also do think that, again, there are some things that are positives from Chris Grier. And I think one of the most positive things we can take is that he is not one of those GMs who wants a long-term rebuild, who wants to take this Dolphins team. He's gone out, signed veteran guys, signing Tyreek Hill, who was almost assured to be the next Jets wide receiver, snagging him late. Obviously, he and Mike McDaniel, the night before they gave him that big offer, he stated he watched 11 hours of film in the film room with Coach McDaniel. So being able to get those guys, Jalen Ramsey, Tyreek Hill, making big signings, building this defense like Calais Campbell, and which was a huge positive signing this offseason. So those are my thoughts overall. I thought, I mean, look, I think you also he also signed guys with guys like Raheem Mostert, Javon Holland, Cater Kohu, guys who have been solid players for the Dolphins. So Grier has had some positives. I think the worst thing about Grier, and I'm going to play this little rant clip over here for you guys. A little rant clip over there. And that is not getting a backup quarterback. Tua is someone who's been injury prone. He clearly struggles with concussions, and having Skylar Thompson as your backup quarterback, who clearly struggled. We saw it 2 years ago, where without Tua, this Dolphins team is 2-7 with backup quarterbacks the last 2 years. And that's excluding the Ryan Fitzpatrick year when Fitzpatrick was the quarterback. But I believe that overall, I think not signing a backup quarterback might have been the stupidest decision for a GM this season. Tua got injured last season. He was out 4 or 5 games injured. Season before, Packers game goes down, out for the season. We have to rely on Skylar Thompson and Teddy Bridgewater. Season before, gets injured at Alabama. What is Chris Grier doing not signing a backup quarterback when you go out and you get OBJ? You have a stacked wide receiver room. Why are you wasting salary cap on Odell Beckham Jr., someone who hasn't seen much playing time, hasn't got a touchdown this season, and not signing a backup quarterback? We're in a situation where we had to play Tim Boyle. When Tyler Huntley went down, yes, I like the free agent signing of Tyler Huntley. At the time, he wasn't good. But there are guys. You have Joe Flacco, a backup for the Indianapolis Colts, who was a free agent. Guess what the Dolphins do? They could have got him. They passed. There were free agents that Chris Grier could have had at the quarterback position to back up Tua Tagovailoa, and he didn't do it. And that's frustrating. That made me vexed. Rigo saying Tim Boyle is best backup ever. Laughing emoji. Yeah, I mean, I I guess it's good you deactivated him, but you're signing CJ Beathard, who. I mean, I get the Mike McDaniel connection with them being the backup under Garoppolo at his times in San Francisco. But yeah, that's my little rant on Chris Grier over there.
Yeah, thank you, JJ. I mean, living in the New York area, I think that Tommy DeVito was a pretty good pickup for the Giants up here. But you gotta do what you gotta do, and I guess this year the Dolphins ended up being left with Tim Boyle in the end, and he, oof. But I think that everything you said makes complete sense. I think that there are good things. There's obviously good things I did. You have to look at this roster. You have to step back, ignore what we saw in the last 2 weeks, look at this roster, and say, well, he did amazing. He got us one of the best, probably the best wide receiver duo in football. He got us one of the best running back duos in football. He got us a QB that's playing capable when not injured of being a top 10 quarterback in football. But then you have to then look at what's actually going on in the game. How is this translating into the day-to-day operations of the Dolphins? And the truth is, it's not. They're not being utilized correctly, and whether that's a coaching problem or just a talent on field type of problem, nothing is clicking for this team to work together. We saw Tua and Waddle and Tyreek Hill play together yesterday for the first time in a couple weeks, and they definitely showed out. But again, it just didn't translate into points because of some decisions at the end of, like, again, that fumble on the goal line, or we saw something that also could have turned the momentum of this game around, that missed pass to Tyreek Hill in the end zone when he just simply was not open or anywhere near Tua Tagovailoa threw that ball, and we ended up having to settle for the field goal. I think that Chris Grier hasn't necessarily done anything to warrant a firing quite yet. I think we can step back at the end of this season, whenever that may be, and say, hey, maybe there's someone better out there that can help us out more, understand how to utilize these players a little bit better. But I think right now the person who should be under more pressure than Grier is Mike McDaniel, and especially this defensive coaching staff, as JJ said earlier. But JJ, of course, trade deadline. It's one of the biggest times in football, and it is fastly approaching. And with a struggling Dolphins team, changes definitely need to be made, even on the level of the players. So, JJ, what do you think for this upcoming NFL trade deadline?
Yeah, real quick, I want to address these comments and I'll get to the trade deadline. I see Pinball Wizard saying fire Greer, fire McDaniel, and get Tua out of there. We gotta play this one.
Hero of the Stupid.
Over there from Mike McDaniel. No, but all jokes aside, I think you got to look at the current state of the Miami Dolphins, and this is a Dolphins team that is 2-5. You're not going to make the playoffs this year, and we're assuming that something drastic doesn't change, and the season has a complete 180. But you're not going to make the playoffs this year. You have a bunch of veteran guys, and you're $5 million under the cap. Javon Holland's contract is expiring. Chop Robinson, you might not want to re-sign, but Javon Holland, I think you should, is expiring. You need that cap room, and there are guys that I'm considering trading. And let's just go over the current state right now. I think you should trade all your veterans. The trade deadline is next Tuesday, November 5th or 4th, I believe. And even if somehow we beat Buffalo before then, we're still 3-5, Andrew. We're still 3-5. If we have a miraculous victory over a Buffalo team who looks on point, the reality of it is we're still 3-5, and we have a hard road coming down. I thought that going into this game, the Dolphins should have gone 4-1 in your next 5. Well, that's not possible anymore, because I doubt that the Miami Dolphins are going to head into Buffalo, a place where you haven't won since 2016, and upset the Bills. So even if you win, you're 3-5. And there are veterans on these Miami Dolphins who could be potentially on the move. Emmanuel Ogbah signed to a 1-year deal before the season. If someone offers you a third, fourth, hell, even fifth round pick, I'm taking it for Emmanuel Ogbah. Calais Campbell, Javon Holland, Raheem Mostert, Cater Kohu. If any team offers between a third and fifth round pick before Tuesday, I think that the Dolphins should accept it. I think we have to garner young talent. And I think the young draft picks and getting guys to build this team, which we've seen quick turnarounds from young players, is more successful than keeping a bunch of these 1-year guys in a season that you are not going to make the playoffs and you're 2-5. A lot of these guys' contracts are expiring. 1 or 2 year team Dolphin players. And this season, let's be honest, the goal, we've been under exceeding expectations. So, Andrew, let me ask you this. Why wouldn't you be sellers of the guys I just mentioned in Raheem Mostert, in Javon Holland, in Calais Campbell, in Emmanuel Ogbah? Why not be sellers, Andrew? Can you give me the other point of why you may want to keep them, or do you agree that this is a seller's deadline?
Well, to be honest, I agree with everything you said. I don't even know if at this point it's an option for the Dolphins to go out there with whatever assets they may have, which isn't much, to go out there and try to gain some good guys to kind of help this season that's clearly not going well. You're kind of aligned with what Pinball Wizard said. They have to start taking calls on players, build assets for a potential draft trade up. The biggest issue is right now we can't launch into a full rebuild because we have Tua Tagovailoa, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. And they're in their prime at the moment. Tyreek said that he wants to end his career with the Miami Dolphins, and obviously he's going to be striving for greatness here. So they can't necessarily be like, okay, I think this is it, and kind of launch into a full rebuild, stocking up on picks. So I agree with what you're saying. Trade the veterans, especially Ogbah signed on that 1-year deal. He's worth something to someone. Grab that fifth round pick, like you said. It's all going to be worth something. I don't think they're necessarily in a position to make any amazing picks next year or anything that they might even need. Obviously, if we just decide to tank this year, who knows where we might end up in the draft next year. But I just think that there's a lot riding on keeping Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle happy. And if that doesn't happen this year, who knows how much longer they're going to last here. I mean, I'm even seeing rumors about Tyreek Hill going back to the Chiefs, of course, which of course is completely insane and hopefully not going to happen. But it's just the state that the Dolphins are in right now is making everyone paranoid from inside the fan base as well as outside. So I completely agree with everything you said about the trade deadline. And hopefully they make some good moves. I want to thank everyone in the chat also for the kind words. It's good to see that you guys agree with what we're saying. I believe those are some buffalo emojis in the chat as well. I don't know if we're going to be bad enough to get one of those Colorado boys, but that would certainly be cool to have one of them on this roster. But I think that most of all, this coaching staff, I'm just going to keep saying it. Everyone in the chat is going to keep saying it. Everyone in this Miami Dolphins fan base is going to keep saying it. I think Mike McDaniels went from one of the smartest coaches in football last season after he lost that Chiefs game in the playoffs. Everything went downhill. I'm not seeing any smart plays. He's trying to be smart, but it's just not working with the way that this team is currently playing and the way that these other defenses has learned to adjust. If we're talking about kind of the future, the Bills have us figured out at this point. And that's obviously going to be the game next week. Rams, Raiders, Pats. They're all not great teams, but based off of what we saw about the Cardinals, it might be tough. And then, of course, we end out the season, Browns, 49ers, Texans, and Jets twice, which I don't know. I don't know how to feel. It might be worth going to try to get a pretty good draft pick for next year. Of course, next year's draft isn't nearly as stacked as this year's was, but there's still the potential to get someone pretty good to help out this team. And most of all, fire Mike McDaniels because he's not doing anything helpful for this team right now. Fire pretty much everyone on this coaching staff. But I'll go against the crowd and say, like you did, there's reasons to keep Grier. I think that he can do some interesting things at the deadline. But if this deadline doesn't go the way that we just said it will and the way that the people in the chat just said it will, then maybe I'll readdress the whole Grier firing. But for right now, I think that it's a bit of an overreaction. But Mike McDaniels at its core is the main issue here.
100% agree. I'll piggyback off that. Mike McDaniel was hired on the goal of making the Miami Dolphins better. Steve Ross made the decision once the Dolphins were 1-7 that he would be firing Flores. Although Flores won 8 of the last 9 games, there was going to be a change in the coaching staff, and McDaniel's job was to improve the Miami Dolphins roster, team, and help this team win games. 2 seasons, 2 playoff appearances. No division wins, however, getting the 5 seed and the 7 seed. I believe it wasn't one of those years being in which having Tua Tagovailoa out for the last 6 games, including the Bills game in the playoffs. So, yes, there is some positives. But again, if I'm Steve Ross, I'm not pushing the panic button until the end of the season. Give McDaniel the rest of the season. We've seen crazier things. The Packers started the season 2-4 last season, made the playoffs, ended up making a run in the playoffs last season. Give him some time. We've seen worse. We started 1-7 just 4 years ago and finished 9-8. So, yeah, Andrew, that's what I have to say to piggyback off the McDaniel rumors.
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to be an interesting week ahead. There is a lot to, I wouldn't say look forward to because there's not going to be much to look forward to in Miamiville for the foreseeable future. But trade deadline is definitely going to be one of the most interesting things we've seen play out all season. Of course, I'll address it once again why I'm wearing this. Grew up in New York, Miami Dolphins fan because the Jets and Giants stink. So there you go. So yeah, I hope everyone enjoys their sports equinox, which if you didn't know is quite a cool thing where all 4 major sports in the United States are all playing on the same night. So go enjoy some Monday Night Football, the World Series, the kickoff of the NBA season, and of course the NHL if you're interested into that sort of stuff. Thank you everyone so much for joining us today for Overreaction Monday. And we'd love to keep hearing what you have to say at Dolphins Talk on X. Let us know what you think about our overreactions. Give us your overreactions. And JJ, let's just hear some final thoughts before we wrap this up for the night.
Yeah, I mean, I want to thank you all for tuning in. 500 viewers right now, so appreciate everyone who took some time. I know this was an on-the-spot live stream over on your Monday nights, but appreciate everyone who tuned into this live stream. And again, yeah, like Andrew said, Miami, yes, the Dolphins are a stinking organization right now, but we do have the Miami Heat, an actual stable organization, and the Florida Panthers right now, Stanley Cup champions. Go Cats, everyone. But again, yes, Andrew said it all there. I think that we'll be back Sunday. We might have a one show here and there. This week, maybe a pre-recorded show. But again, make sure you guys hit the subscribe button if you're watching on the YouTube side of things. And then for everyone following on the X, make sure you drop a follow if you're viewing on the X. Thank you guys for watching, Andrew. I'll let you give the outro.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Thank you, Pinball Wizard. Let's hope for that Yankees comeback. Let's see it. Fins up, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for listening to our first 2 shows on DolphinsTalk.com. I'm hoping we get the great chance to continue here. And thank you, everyone, for all the kind words and the support with our first 2 shows. We'll see you for the pregame show this week. It's going to be fun against the Buffalo Bills. And hopefully the trade deadline goes well for us and we can be speaking a little more positively next weekend. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.